Welcome to the ADNA Presents. Today we have another very special guest. Today, Stephen Letnes is joining us. He is a brilliant musician. He's a brilliant composer. He works in the film industry, and he's got some thoughts and advocacy that we're going to talk about. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Roy.
What do you love about audio description?
I'm visually impaired. I have RP, and for many years, I didn't know it even existed, right? And so I finally get to experience a show or a film with more information than I ever knew was available. And, the voices are wonderful. Give me human voices all day. Synth voices are garbage. But like the amount of information I was missing, I finally feel like I am a part of the lived experience with audio description when it's available on the various platforms.
One of the things that I've been so impressed with, particularly over the last few years, is as your connections in the film industry grow, as in the context of being a composer, you've also stepped outside of that role and been advocating for no garbage audio description. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution in your working career?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll have to go way back, but I'll try to truncate my answer. I have been writing music for the film industry, independent film primarily, for a little over 10 years. And when I got into composing, being visually impaired, I had no one to look up to. There were no composers who were out about having a visible or invisible disability, and there were certainly none who were blind or visually impaired. And so I had to learn a lot of my techniques on my own. And as I got more and more into the film industry and witnessed the various challenges that not only blind and low vision individuals have, but people with disabilities at large experience when they're looking to write music in the entertainment industry, I realized something had to be done. And that's why I started an organization called Able Artist Foundation, which specifically supports disabled composers and musicians. And from that advocacy, I had two jobs, not only as an executive director of a nonprofit, but also working my day job as a film composer. And because I was running those two tracks, that's what led me to be invited to develop and organize 1 in 4 Coalition, which is an intersectional group of working disabled professionals in Hollywood. And from there, we get to speak with studios, with distributors, advocating for the employment of people with disabilities, as well as the authentic representation of disabled people on and off screen.
Thanks for sharing that. Specifically about the 1 in 4 Coalition, it sounds like that's really exciting in the past that it's opening up. And I'd imagine because this is relatively unprecedented, with very few exceptions, what are some of the challenges that you and your organization have been really proud of how you've gotten past, especially with all the, I'm imagining a film industry has certain processes and ways of doing things that 1 in 4 is actually asking to consider some other ways.
I consider myself pretty fortunate. The people in this group are pretty influential. And so it's about getting in those boardrooms, getting to have meetings with people in positions of power who can make change. And we're able to get in there. But okay, so you're in the room. Now what? Whether we are providing a presentation to a handful of people or 100 people, who is going to listen and then who is going to act on that information? Because what we discuss with them is about accessibility. It's about, for example, on the production side, we say, hey, look, your productions, when you are traveling to set, they need to be accessible. Where are the ramps? Where are the trailers with the bathrooms? I think they're honey wagons, I think.
Mhm.
They're not accessible. Why aren't they accessible? And we provide solutions for making sets accessible. And what my role primarily, or one of my roles when speaking with people at whomever we're speaking with, is specifically discussing accessible content and specifically audio description. The challenge is more than half of the time, people don't even know what audio description is. And so there's that education that needs to happen. and providing examples. What are the more powerful examples? Because you can give people information, but you need to put it into context. And one of the things that I've seen and experienced with audio description is when audio description is done right, a sighted person and a blind person, when they're watching a comedy, more often than not, will laugh at the same time, right? And to present a scenario like that to people in positions of power dramatically impacts their, even if they don't quite understand audio description and what it is, they will understand the gravity and the importance of it. And so it's tough because, it's 30 million blind low vision people in the United States, let alone the world. And trying to convince, people that they should be doing something that should be there in the first place. I mean, no film is complete until it's completely accessible, as far as I'm concerned. And sometimes I have to start from the basics. Here's what audio description actually is. Here's a scenario as to why it's important. And here's why you should be putting it on all of your content, legacy and new. It depends on the people I'm talking with as to how deep into that conversation I feel is warranted.
Oh, thank you so much for that answer. You talked earlier about no garbage and talking about doing it right, and most recently in the last part of what you just said, you said no film is complete until it's completely accessible, and how you've been able to pivot the message. There is no one specific message because there's no one specific person that you're talking to. Each person is on a different path of awareness, of education, of where they are, what their responsibilities or their roles are. So it just sounds like a really fascinating and exhausting path. Can you name some experiences that have been supportive? I can only imagine, Steve. I'm sorry I keep talking here. You carved your own way as a blind and visually impaired composer in the film industry on your own. And it sounds like there's a lot of similarities to what you and the team in 1 in 4 Coalition are doing. Let me start with that question. What are some of the things that you're seeing, or oh yeah, I've been down this road before as far as educating people about access or completing a film?
Well, it also extends to my own journey with audio description because I'm still relatively new to it. I had no idea what I was missing, even though I have some sight. I thought, you know, I thought I was getting the full experience, and it wasn't until experiencing audio description that I really appreciate how valuable it is. And so I primarily work in independent film. And there's pretty much two pathways in the industry at large. There's the independent industry, and then there's the studio industry. I mostly work in the independent side, which means budgets are different, timelines are different, your crew is different. And so I've worked with independent filmmakers, and none of them knew what audio description was. So I started to work with a director, Cy Dodson, who is sighted. And you check this out. Here's how long stuff takes in the film industry. I met Cy 4 years before he and I even embarked on trying to see if we could work together as a producer and a composer together. So relationships take time. Everything just takes more time and costs more than you think. So after 4 years of knowing who this person is, we finally get to work on a film together, a short documentary. It goes viral. It gets massive hits. It's called Beneath the Ink. And then from there, he and I worked on some other projects. And then when I became aware and appreciated audio description, I brought it up to him. Hey, we're working on this George Floyd documentary called Say His Name, 5 Days for George Floyd. This really needs to be accessible. What do you think about adding audio description? And he was open to it, but I had to inform him and educate him and get him to a position to say, oh, this has value. This isn't just an expense. My composer uses this. I think we should do this too. And then having the experience of him going through the experience of hiring the audio description team. And now he wants to do it on all of his films going forward. So it takes time, and it's one director at a time. But I will say this. Okay, sidebar. Okay, I don't know if we're going to want to keep this in, Roy, but whenever I hear people talk about doing the right thing, and if just one person does something for the goodness of somebody, I feel the work is worth it. And I come from the exact opposite view. If one person does the right thing from the work I'm doing, then I haven't done enough. But even though we focus one person at a time, there's a long way to go. And thankfully, one of my directors, Cy, is an amazing dude who now appreciates audio description.
Yeah, we're keeping that sidebar in. It's when you talk about that experience of that one director, there seems like there is some leverage that you and 1 in 4 Coalition can use specifically with audio description in that here's this very specific example of an independent film that had the budget restrictions, that had the timeline, that had the crew that was what the crew was, and yet the audio description was done with an entirely blind team of audio description leaders. That was sadly unprecedented, but hopeful as modeling how this can be going forward. We're now talking more about the accessibility on the production side as well as the content side. The content side affects the audience, and it sounds like what we're talking about specifically with size film, that there's something new to that as well that seems very similar to maybe some other initiatives that you're working on in other films as far as including professionals who are disabled. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just got hired to score a feature documentary about blind cyclists who race across America. And as a visually impaired composer who advocates for audio description, as well as the hiring of people with disabilities in an industry who has all but forgotten we exist unless they're capitalizing on our stories. So 23 of the Oscar members win the award from non-disabled people who are playing these people. So I'm a little biased and a little jaded about it, but okay. But I want to be positive, right? I'm passionate, but how do I take this frustration and anger and turn it into something positive, a meaningful message? And to do the right thing can be difficult, but it's worth it. And so this film with blind cyclists, I decided I want to make a point and I want to drive it home. And so a lot of composers, for people out there, when you see composer on screen, say 1917 or Spider-Man No Way Home, when that you did, Roy, for audio description. I still haven't seen the movie, but whoever did that music, and I can't quite remember who did the music, when you see or hear the audio or the narrator say composer Pinar Choprak, right? She did Captain Marvel. Composer means head of department. So in an independent film, composer might just be one person writing the music, mixing the music, and delivering it to the editor. But in the studio side, composer means the composer may write all the themes, but they have assistants, they have orchestrators, they have live crews, they have a bunch of people under them. They're a head of department. So with this type of film, with the budget that we have, I said, because there are blind people in this film, I want to hire as many people, blind individuals, to be a part of my staff as a composer. So my assistant is visually impaired from Turkey. My sound designer, she's from the UK. She's visually impaired. My sound mixer is blind. He's from New York. There's a violinist here in Minnesota who's visually impaired. There's a blind guitarist. But okay, my point is I want to demonstrate, and this is harder work because it's never been done, which kind of stinks. Like sometimes I would love to just chill out, get hired for a film and write the music, get my paychecks, and then just like go buy like super expensive coffee because I think I'm worth it, right? But no, like the life that I live, the purpose-driven life that I have is founded in advocacy and doing the right thing and justice. It is about disability justice and how better to demonstrate to an industry that has been ignorant about our needs and about our rights as people with disabilities, I want to say to them, I'm not just going to tell you how easy it is to hire blind and visually impaired individuals or people with disabilities at large. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to demonstrate to you, look, it's really not that hard. I mean, what are blind and visually impaired people really good at? We're good at community. We're good at reaching out. We can learn to reach out to others. Say, hey, look, hey, I'm not really able to do this part, but I can do this part really well. So can you assist me with this part of it? We can build networks like nobody's business, right? It's like a skill that non-disabled people seem to forget that they should cultivate. So it's just simply demonstrating to the industry, it's really not that hard. Just ask questions. And we're here there for you. We're there for you. We'll tell you who to hire. We'll tell you where to go. We'll tell you if you have, it's just being okay to ask questions. So, all right, I'm okay.
I
I'll stop.
love this. Please don't stop. I'm laughing at yes, yes. I'm cheering you on. Laugh. Yes, you're passionate about this, and it's shown that you've invested so much not only into your own career but your own advocacy here to make these statements so clearly and the importance of it. It's really shining through clearly.
Okay, well, thank you. And just, I don't want to say this. I hope people take this in the spirit in which it's intended. Why am I the first film composer to do this? Why? Where are the other leaders who have far more experience, far more cachet, far more star power? Why aren't they doing this? It's not hard. But okay, well then this small town, well, Minneapolis isn't small, but like this independent lowly composer is got to do it. Okay, well then let's figure it out. Let's take this opportunity to say, all right, how did this go? How did not only my experience go as a composer, but how did the production team, how did the director, how did the editor, how do I feather this experience and weave this into the experience to say, here are the people that I hired. This is the experience that I had, and make it positive, but also play a little politics to say, here's how easy it was. Look, isn't this a great experience that you're having? So I feel like there is a responsibility to make sure things go right. I don't know. I think I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head, Roy. Because I honestly, I don't have a primer for this. I don't have a primer. I've been given the film and where I should be spotting the film and setting the points of where the music goes and figuring out what in themes and melodies. I'm thinking about okay, what are the needs of the support of blind and low vision individuals that I'm hiring? Do they have any additional needs that I should be mindful of? And yeah, they might, but obviously they probably don't, because they've already figured it out themselves. It's not going to be hard. Like it's like I'm because I want this to go right. And so I'm anxious about that, because this could be a representative, an example to share. Anyway, okay, I'm starting to repeat myself, but this is important. This is important, Roy.
It sure is. It really is. And what I'm hearing also with that example of there is no primer, this uncharted thing, that the pressure is higher for things to go right. And the experience that you must have had as not only a composer, but also an independent film composer, and also as a visually impaired independent film composer, that each of those elements adds its own isolation, that experience going alone, you've made it very clear that you were alone. I'm wondering about the alliances that did peek through for you, or how that a future composer who's in a similar position as far as a disabled composer is able to get access. What are the alliances that composer who is wanting to showcase their craft and their skill and get in, but has these barriers? It sounds like you've answered this. I'm wondering about, okay, you've personally approached this on your own. What opportunities does an independent film composer or an up and coming film composer or someone in the film industry have as far as those alliances go that may not have existed when you carved your own way?
Oh, that's a great question. And I love to be able to say there are far more resources than there were when I started. Not only am I going to pitch my own organization, we have discounts on tons of products. We have grants. We have contests for anybody with a disability. And that's specifically for music. There's an organization called Ramped, Recording Artists and Music Professionals with Disabilities, that I also co-founded. Again, that's focused on music. for anybody with any type of disability. There's One in Four Coalition. One in Four is our founding members are writers, producers, actors, directors, talent managers, visual effects supervisors, composers, and other positions. And so for people wanting to get into the industry, there are organizations like One in Four Coalition, whatever the position you are looking for, like screenwriters. We need more disabled screenwriters out there. And there are programs. We partnered up with Franklin Leonard over at the Blacklist for screenwriting programs, for mentoring that people can do. So there are far more resources than there were when I started. And thus there is support. And there are people who want to elevate and empower individuals who may not have felt very well supported, whether it's family, whether it's professionally. There are beginning to be more resources. You just got to sift through the noise to find them. But that's why I'm thankful for shows like yours, Roy, that give us the opportunity to share who and what is out there to support people looking to make their way in an industry like the film and TV industry.
Throughout those examples that you gave as far as alliances and resources, and throughout this conversation, I hear the words empower, support, do things right. These are all very good words. These are all really like, yes, yes.
Well, we don't need help. Blind people don't need help. We need support. We need people to just shut up and listen.
Yes.
So, but no, I think I'll just stop there. I was about to go off the deep end there.
The water's deep in this podcast.
Yeah, well, just that. It's like it's one of the challenges. I want to say this. My life didn't get better until I accepted that I was visually impaired and that I learned how to reach out to say, here's what I need. Here's the support I need. I'm not going to sit here and ask you to give me stuff. I'm like, I already know how to do a ton of stuff here, but here are the specific things that I'm looking for. And then I have to get over the handout questions and the people talking down to me or speaking slowly or speaking more loudly and get through that ignorance, that morass, to then get them to understand where I'm coming from so that they feel empowered with the information I'm giving them for them to help me the way I need them to. So yeah, where's the auxiliaries? I mean, generals, we are our own generals. Where are our auxiliaries? How do we find them? How do we conscript people into our professional army to succeed in life? Yeah, but they just need to be quiet and listen.
Yes. And when that happens, there is a benefit that seems to be, you had alluded to this in saying that the empowerment goes both ways. If I could, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I heard is when you demand the support in those capacities that you're asking for support, not not to that condescending level, but where you deserve it, that you get empowered, but you also empower them when it comes to the what's in it for the Cy Dodsons, what's in it for independent filmmakers, what's in it for the studios. That's not the focused question. I want to make that very clear, that this is not the question that is the core here. And by asking the question, it shows them that there is a mutual benefit. And I think you alluded to that by saying that you empower them. Could you address maybe some experiences you've had in that capacity as far as the what's in it for the Cy Dodsons, what's in it for independent filmmakers when access is provided?
Okay, I'm not sure how to quite answer this. One, it's just the right thing to do. It's like non-disabled people get in their own ways. And there's a humanity that's lost when they think they should be thinking about certain questions in a certain way. And it's introducing them to concepts that open up their films to not only just a wider audience and not only economically, but I will bet, for example, this is me just postulating here. I will bet that Cy Dodson has not received the type of feedback about his film as he has from people as a result of blind and low vision audiences who got to experience the film with audio description. Because there is a depth, and I think there's a what is it, a Taoist or Buddhist principle? Life is suffering, and through suffering comes compassion. And I think from compassion comes rational, practical, and reasonable action. And Sai, I think, for example, not to put him on the spot here, but other people, when they see us not as our disability, but as a human being, there is compassion there. There is a breadth of understanding that they say, oh, this is the right thing to do. And as a result of doing the right thing, the audience will naturally expand. And I think people forget that, because in an industry where people are afraid to do the wrong thing, how is progress done in any industry where fear exists, right? And I'm not saying the industry is a scary place, but every industry is just as scary, right? So what is their approach? And I think by humanizing and providing something such as audio description or hiring people with disabilities onto your staff, it simply broadens their minds and comprehension. It's having a variety of people in a writing room. I mean, it's just, people ought to want to hear varying perspectives. And the problem with varying perspectives is there's nuance. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go off the deep end here, but it's like our media and our politicians have completely forgot the concept of nuance. And what I love about disabilities is the nuance therein. For example, I flew out to LA last month, or maybe a couple months ago, for a film premiere. And it was the first time I actually had a conversation with somebody who was deaf, and their interpreter was there. You don't talk to the interpreter, you talk to the person. But even as much advocacy as I have done, and as hard and as difficult and challenging as that is, I still have first-time experiences like that gives me perspective. And what will make film, TV, media better is varying perspective. And I think people completely just manipulate and warp the concept of diversity, the concept of intersectionality, into something that it never has, because even those who fight against it cannot appreciate the nuance that there is to, again, make the content better. And that's what diversity, intersectionality, equity, inclusion does provide. If you're patient enough and willing to ask questions and to be open to expanding your mind, which makes us better people. Maybe that's a happy, maybe a super Pollyannish way to look at it, but that's how I want to look at it, because I'm a realist, or I'm a hopeless romantic, and I am actively, I choose to be. I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt, because that is the world I want to live in. So I will give people I vehemently disagree with the benefit of the doubt until they give me a reason otherwise. And I hope other people will learn that.
Wow. Talk about nuance. Talk about making the content better. Talk about compassion. Could you compose a score to go with that very beautiful monologue that you just gave, and just share it with 1 in 4 Coalition, and just say, okay, we're done. All you have to do is listen to this.
And the benefit is I know tons of disabled composers who could do it.
Yes. Really, really well said. Steve, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Keep fighting, keep writing, keep composing, keep believing. I mean, it's just, I don't want to give people platitudes, because life is hard, but it's rewarding. Everything takes longer, costs more than you think, but where do you go to identify the resources that will provide the support for you to get to where you need to go? Everything is, they're tough. Even at some of these highfalutin meetings, one of the things I've appreciated about the film industry is that, one, I never thought I would work in it, but two, when I'm in some of these, backroom meetings, they're just people. And, they're talking about their gardens, and they're talking about where their kids are going to school, and their Zoom links don't work, and their microphones are terrible. And it's like, it's the same problems. And I think what I'm getting at, Roy, is I'm having kind of this idea in my head is, one of the things that I've experienced about Able Artists Foundation are the many emails that I get about people being grateful and thankful and asking permission to do certain things. And I think that that is a disservice that a world that wasn't created for us has done to us, is thinking that we need permission. We need to ask others to take risk, to take a chance. And you don't need anybody's permission. You don't need to ask anybody. And there's a sense of isolation that people have shared with me. And there are communities that are out there for you, and people are building them. People want to connect. And so I think my final message is, don't ask for permission again. I mean, I mean, unless you're 12 years old and like you want to go for a walk, yeah, you ask your parents for permission, but like take the subconscious idea that society may have put into your mind that, look, you only have one place to be. There's no such thing in our world as beggars can't be choosers. We have a right, we deserve to have quality audio description in parity with sighted audiences. We have a right, we deserve to be hired, because blind, like what is it, like 70% of college educated blind and low vision individuals are unemployed or underemployed. That's ridiculous. We can do the job too. And we don't have to explain ourselves. We don't have to apologize for it. We can bend other people to our will too. So I guess it's all possible.
Thank you for sharing that on so many counts. Thank you. You've mentioned Able Artist Foundation. You've mentioned Ramped. You've mentioned 1 in 4 Coalition, and obviously your own efforts. What's the best way to follow you or any of them? Social media, websites, etc. Could I put you on the spot for any or all of those?
It's funny. I had an interview for a film for a project, and the guy was asking about my music, and I started talking about all my advocacy. And about 10 minutes into the interview, he said, "Hey, I'm not asking about your advocacy. I'm asking about you as a composer." Which just kind of humbled me. Thankfully, like 1 in 4 Coalition that's how it is on all the social medias. It's the number 1 in number 4 coalition.org. Ramped is RAMPD. Able Artist Foundation is Able Artist on a lot of social media platforms. If you want to, which email do I give out? If you have general questions, I'd say info@ableartist.org, info@ableartistsingular.org would be a good place to shoot emails.
Thanks so much for all of the content and all of the outreach that you've given to our audiences to connect with any of these organizations, including yourself. And what a beautiful interview this is. Thank you so much for everything that you shared.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me, Roy. It's always great to speak with you. Thank you so much.